This episode is proudly supported by Pepe Sayer Australian Cultured Butter.
It's a one-stop shop for all your butter needs at Pepe Sayer. So if you're a restaurant or an airline or a function centre or a cafe, you can give us a call or jump online with us, and we have everything you need for your butter needs. We cover all of it. The biggest one for me is the little logs that we make that you can cut down and put a little Pepe Sayer tab on it. Also the 15-gram portions, but we also do blocks. And in the blocks, so we do 25 kilo or 20 kilo, but we also do a 2 kilo. So you can buy a block of butter 2 kilo, and the prices are really competitive with the rest of the markets on those products.
For more information, go to pepesayer.com.au.
When food is seasonal, that's when nature gifts it to us, when it's the easy thing for nature to give us. If it comes out of season, we've had to force it to happen. And I think that's, as a producer, I think that's one of the pivotal things that when customers do, is when we buy food out of season, we're actually potentially causing harm to the earth.
Today is a special day on the podcast. We are wrapping up the Jo Barrett Takeover Week. Jo has been chatting to changemakers in food systems all week, and it's been really inspiring. We are finishing with a bang. I will let Jo take it away.
So today I'm speaking with Matthew Evan. He's a former chef and food critic, and he has written 9 books. And I thought one was hard, and then Matthew's 9 just blew it out of the park. He lives and works on Fat Pig Farm, a soil-to-stomach regenerative farm and kitchen in Tasmania. He tours around the country covering many hot topics. I saw Matthew speak at Grains Festival earlier this year in Geelong. However, I have been a fan for quite a while. In 2021, Matthew published Soil, which was around the same time that I was at Future Food System, and there were many similarities between that project and the book. I'm really interested in his transition from restaurants to agriculture, and I know that's sparked by his beliefs in the food system. Matthew, thank you for this opportunity and for taking the time to chat with us.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, thanks for having me, Jo.
Thank you. You've got an incredible way of retaining information and then regurgitating it out to people so they can digest it. And that's really apparent in your books. And you tackle some massive issues in the current food system. I'm really keen to know, from your time as a chef and a food critic to now, what have been the biggest changes in your thinking about our food system?
Oh, yeah, look, it's 4 decades pretty much since I started my apprenticeship. It's really scary. And you go, oh, my God, look, there's massive changes. And a lot of them have been good. And I'll start with maybe some of that, because when I was a chef, we trained I trained in Canberra. No one opened their own oysters. Oysters came pre-opened. I never saw a lime in my entire apprenticeship, in 1983, whatever. We used to, when we made a lime sauce, we took lime cordial and boiled it up in a pan with, cream. That was a lime sauce to put on chicken breast. So, it's easy to find fault, I guess, with a lot of things that we do today. But there's, in some ways, the variety of food, what's available, and how we understand how to treat and respect the produce, I think, has come ahead in leaps and bounds. But I guess on the flip side of that is the intensification of the food system, and the fact that food is having to come from further away, and it's coming more out of season, and the people who cook it, the chefs on the ground, the home cooks, are losing some of that innate wisdom about what is seasonal, because you think it's seasonal because you see it in the shops, or your wholesaler or your greengrocer has got it, and I think and if something isn't seasonal, when food is seasonal, that's when nature gifts it to us, when it's the easy thing. If something isn't seasonal, when food is seasonal, that's when nature gifts it to us, when it's the easy thing for nature to give us. If it comes out of season, we've had to force it to happen, and I think that's, as a producer, I think that's one of the pivotal things that when customers do, is when we buy food out of season, we're actually potentially causing harm to the earth.
Yeah, and when you were on your apprenticeship, were you even kind of thinking about where food was coming from?
No. No, I just wanted to stay. I just wanted to stay alive. I don't know what kitchens are like these days, and I'm sure your kitchen, Jo, is very pleasant to work in, and hopefully ours was on the farm. but the kitchens that I trained in were dangerous places, and you just wanted to stay out of trouble, and you just wanted to get the job done as quickly as possible, so no one shouted at you. Where the food came from was not something that I gave a second's thought to.
And then, so was it when you started to kind of restaurant critique that you started to think about produce, or like when did the shift start to happen before you made the move to Tasmania?
Yeah, so I became a head chef of a restaurant in Canberra in the mid-90s, and I then it was at that time that I started to, I was the person talking to the suppliers, and I'm going, well, why is that chicken breast better than the other chicken? Can I have the good one? And I can get seafood that's not frozen. That's fantastic. And I can talk to someone who's the oyster farmer, and the oyster farmer will bring the oysters to my door unopened. And it was then that I started to realise, I sort of heard about good food and seasonality, and how important soil health was, and how important farmers were. But it was all sort of tokenistic. But it was only when I was actually at that moment I'm going, so this is actually good, and it is worth paying the extra money, and it does make my job easier as a cook.
Yeah, I remember having a moment. I was living in Canada and did part of my apprenticeship over there, and then I came back, and I remember it took forever to fly back from Canada, and was at a restaurant, and they served a Canadian scallop, and I thought, we have amazing scallops here in Port, in our Melbourne port. Why are we flying them all the way from Canada? I know how far that is now. I've just been there. And it was a really big moment of what the hell's going on?
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? And it does take something like that, this moment, hang on. I thought the cherries were local, but they seem to be from California this week, so I need to change my menu.
It's odd. And I do feel like if things were going really well, we probably wouldn't be talking about, soil health and the climate as much, but they're not. And at the beginning of your book, Soil, you do kind of do a bit of a snapshot of what agriculture currently looks like. Could you kind of summarise, I guess, what is happening at the moment with growing food?
Yeah, so growing food, because the way we choose to grow food, typically humans arrive in a place. This is historically, and the way farming works, Western style farming, not Europe, Aboriginal style farming, but European style farming. People arrive in a place. If there's trees, they cut them down and grow a crop or graze an animal. And if there's grass, they probably graze an animal, and it's probably not good enough to grow a crop, but they might grow a crop. That's pretty much how it works. And then we would plough the soil to grow the crops, and that's really bad for soil. So, and what has happened typically is humans have grown food and gone, hang on, the soil's lost its fertility. It's not as good anymore. Like the breadbasket of biblical era is a desert now. That's what's happened. The Garden of Eden is not a garden anymore. And so that's happened over history. But what we've done is we've just gone, that's a bit of a shame, and we've moved on. Something like 16 major civilizations have collapsed because they've ruined their soil and haven't been able to feed their population. So soil health and civilization has been big communities have been intimately tied. Currently, we lose soil if our cropping land where you grow your vegetables and your grains. If you plough the land, the global average is you lose soil 100 times faster than nature can make it. And if you don't plough the land, it's about 10 to 20 times faster than nature can make it. That soil is lost. Now, some people can grow crops and not lose soil, but that's the global average. So that means on average, for every breakfast, for every lunch, for every dinner that every human on Earth eats, we lose up to 9 kilograms of topsoil per meal, per person. So imagine that when you have your cereal tomorrow, a bucket full of topsoil washed or blown away. And when soil is washed or blown away, it becomes less fertile. So we're damaging land at crazy rates, and there's only one Earth. They talk about, we're going to test for soil on Mars or test for soil. The Mars and Moon don't have soil; they have dirt, and dirt does not grow food. What we've got on here on Earth is a system of beautiful topsoil. It's co-evolved with plants and animals with plants for the last 500 million years, with animals for a little bit less than that. That's the soil that is evolved to grow our food. Can we grow topsoil and grow food? Well, the good news, Joe, is we can. So while farming has damaged land, there have been some farmers who've managed to grow crops for thousands of years in the same place. And what we need to do is learn off those farmers, use some modern techniques, modern technology, and not only stop damaging soil, but repair the damage that farming has done.
Yeah, is that regenerative agriculture?
Yeah, regenerative agriculture is, I guess, the umbrella term that most people use for that, or agroecology. So there are other terms. There are farmers who I don't do regenerative agriculture, who are building topsoil and doing great things. So they're kind of doing it. They just don't have a label for it. Farmers aren't trying to ruin the world. Very few people have gone out there going, oh, well, bugger it. It doesn't matter if this happens, if we damage land. But it can be really slow. It can be incremental. We may not see it happen. And now we know how to measure these things, and we also know how to restore landscapes and build biodiversity and grow nutritious, delicious food. But it does take a little bit of a mind shift because of 10,000 years of accumulated farming knowledge is embodied in the farmers today, and their practices. And some of those people will find it maybe hard to change, or to say, oh, hang on. I've tried to do the best for my land, but maybe it's gone downhill in my lifetime. Maybe we need to, change the system and repair some of the damage that we've inadvertently caused. And I stress that because farmers are, they're really not trying to do damage. They're just trying to, grow food for the other 99% of the population who don't farm, and not go broke in the process. So it does take, but the good news is we do have the technology and the wisdom.
We did an interview with Sam Oakton from Stop Food Waste Australia, and he was talking about they kind of go into big industry and work with government to stop food waste on a large scale. And while we were interviewing him, I had a realization of no one's actually trying to create food waste. It's costly, and I know people always kind of, the pressure goes onto the farmer of, they're not trying to ruin the planet. They're just trying to feed people and stay alive. So that's been a really big realization this week of some of the bigger issues that we're having. No one's trying to cause them.
Yeah, there can be a sense of demonization, and look, there are people who have agendas about how we should eat and what we should eat, who can demonize farmers, and it's not very helpful because they're just there, growing some food, and you might not agree with the way they treat the animals or the way they, what they've done with their chemical use or whatever. But they're not doing it out of malice or spite. There's a commercial imperative to be able to do it at a certain price because that's what people will pay. They believe they're doing the right thing, and what I really like about the idea of regenerative agriculture or agroecology is that there are all these problems with carbon in the atmosphere and floods and droughts and all these kind of problems which are going to impact us all more and more, and a lot of them can be repaired by good farming. A good farm ecosystem is a biodiverse ecosystem. It filters water so that the water passing through the property is clean when it comes out, because that's what good soil does. It cleans the water. More carbon in your soil is really good for your plants and your animals, but it's also it helps to store water better, so water infiltrates better. So in rains and in droughts, it stays in the soil better. So it's really good for the farmer and good for the soil to be doing these things. But carbon in soil is much better than having it in the atmosphere. So farming has sort of been part of the problem. And it's not a small part of the problem with biodiversity loss and some carbon into the atmosphere, but it's also a massive part of the solution.
Yeah, I can see that, and I think food is a big part of the solution, which is exciting because we all eat. You did talk about which you said topsoil, and I loved that part of your book, In Soil. And I think a lot of people would think topsoil is a thing that gets delivered or that you pick up from Bunnings in a bag. Could you tell us a little bit about topsoil? And I feel like that's a really major part of like a misconception, the importance of topsoil and what's happening to it, what happens to it when you kind of farm incorrectly or, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So what we walk around on, what stuff grows in, most of that is, a crushed up rock. So the thing we're walking on is crushed up rock. So it's sand and silt and clay. So that's dirt. It only becomes soil when it has something really magical in it, and that's life. So there's a cliche from the 1930s, I think it is, that humanity only exists because the fact we have 6 inches of topsoil and it occasionally rains, right? That's the difference between us existing on Earth and not. That's actually a fact. So, except we don't have 6 inches of topsoil in most of Australia. I'm in Western Australia, and parts of this state only have about a centimetre of topsoil. That's the difference, because that's what does all the growing. So the dirt doesn't do growing. You need life in the soil. When you dig into the soil, it's the dark bit at the top. So if you dig into your back garden, it'll be the very dark bit at the top. And that dark bit is organic matter. So that's stuff that used to be alive. So it's, leaf matter and roots that have rotted into the ground, but it's also living things. So about 1% of the dry matter of soil is living stuff. And when people talk about healthy soil, like healthy by definition means alive. And biology, we're just discovering how much life there is in soil. So a single teaspoon of soil can have more living things than there are humans on the planet. So the amount that fits into the end of your thumb, the last joint of your thumb, can have about 10 billion living things. And those living things, plants don't eat dirt, but they need things that are locked in rocks, things like iron and copper and magnesium, whatever. That's all minerals in rocks. And plants can't sort of eat rocks, but they can get the biology, the living things in soil, can dissolve those minerals and make them available to the plant in a form the plant can digest. So that biology, and your listeners some of them may have heard of the human microbiome. So inside us, there's all these living things that help us to digest our food. They're really important. Over half the cells in the human body aren't us. And those things help us digest our food. A plant has the same thing, but their gut, essentially is outside the roots. So it's the bit around their roots. And all the living things out on the outside of the roots are helping them to digest their food, the stuff that they really need from that are locked in rock crystals. And there's tiny amounts of those minerals, but they're absolutely vital. It's like vitamins and minerals for us. We don't need huge amounts, but yeah, we need them. Otherwise, we get sick.
Yeah, that's amazing. I can see how, we at Future Food System, we spoke a lot about nutrition density in our food from the soil, and when you kind of align it with your gut biome or treat the roots as your stomach, it's really interesting that, if we've got depleted soils, then, the nutrition of our vegetables would have to be depleting as well. Do you think, we've got a depletion happening there?
Yeah. So and look, the thing about the depletion, there can be iron, or let's use iron, because we all need iron, and we all know that we need, it's important in our blood and all that sort of stuff. And a lot of people can be iron deficient. So soil can have iron in it, but it doesn't necessarily get into the plants that are growing in that soil because of that biology, or because of it, the chemical interactions with plants and soil. And so how can the plant access the iron that's in the soil it's in? A more living system, a more biological system, a more active, healthy soil can allow the plant to absorb more of the iron that's in around its roots. So sometimes we have deficiencies because things have washed through our soils, particularly Australia. Our soils are old, so certain minerals wash out quicker than others. Sometimes things weren't really in that part of the world, and other things were more dominant. But generally, most of the things the plant wants are generally around, and it's how the plants can access them that becomes important. And yeah, that's why people get their soil tests, and they might need to add little trace elements and small amounts of stuff, but you still got to get the plant to take it up. And nutrient density is, I think, it's the next great frontier where we say, okay, so one carrot is not the same as another carrot. One has more nutrient density than another. And so how do we test for that? And for us, for me as a grower, what I've discovered is that the more living my soil is, the more interactions there are between the plant and the soil. It sounds crazy to your listeners. They probably they'll think I'm sort of some woo-woo, hippie from southern Tasmania, but plants can talk. They sort of communicate with the soil to say what they need, and they create chemicals, and they have this chemical communication going on between plants and soil, and between soil and plants. So the more stuff in the soil, the more communications going on from the plant, and those chemicals of communication are actually nutrients. They're micronutrients that a lot of them are really have a role in human health. Some don't, but vast majority have some role in human health, and as again tiny fractions. But the nice thing is, for me, is that those chemicals actually, a lot of them have a flavour, have a smell. So we can essentially flavour for us as humans. So we eat a carrot that's more nutrient dense. We can actually tell the difference when we eat it about one that's more nutrient dense, more delicious, more complex. And it's almost as though humans were hardwired, almost like we've been evolved to be able to tell more nutrient dense food when we eat it. It's a great system.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because I find when we pick things for the restaurant where we grow, they taste a lot better, and then you don't need to eat as much. It kind of feels like you're satisfied because you've gotten everything that you need from the plant. But then when you're eating things that might not have much more flavour and maybe less nutrients, you kind of just keep eating, and then you overeat. You kind of it's like your body's seeking that out.
Yeah, there's some really clever people all around the world who do research on this sort of idea of animal wisdom, and they deal with livestock. So I was just talking to someone about sheep, and they said sheep have wisdom, and I don't know if anyone's ever had sheep, but they thinking of sheep having wisdom made me laugh. But they have this body wisdom, so they know what they need to eat. So if you give them enough of a variety of plants, they get this they kind of know what they need at certain times of year. So they'll eat different plants at different times of year, or if they're pregnant or have just given birth or whatever. And they have this body wisdom. And we know from some research that was done on orphans last century, the century before, when they were these kids were given an array of foods, they chose the things that suited them and their metabolism, and gave them the nutrients they wanted. And so it's this beautiful thing. Humans have this ability, but we also have a massive manufacturing system and marketing system that makes lots of money by tricking us. And so, when I say, we have this innate capacity to tell something is nutrient dense because it's more delicious, well, it doesn't work for donuts. Right, because the system is designed to trick us into thinking donuts are nutrient dense when they're not. And you nailed it when you said that the problem is with that, we eat the donut and then our body is saying, well, you still haven't given me the nutrients I need. Oh, I better eat another donut, or I better go and eat a packet of chips or whatever. And I'm as bad as anyone. Give me a packet of chips. I'm salt and vinegar chips. The packet's gone, right? And I know in my brain that the conscious bit that's not giving me my nutrients, but I'm sort of craving them, thinking this has got to give me some set. I'm getting something from this, but then I keep eating them, so I'm obviously not getting it. Give me a delicious vegetable, I eat it, and I'm like, yep, done. My body's happy. I don't need to eat anymore.
Yeah, and I do think that ties in as well with the seasonality, because I'm a really big advocate on seasonal produce, and I think that the season produces what you need at that time. And where you're living in, the climate that you're living in, it will provide you what you need to live in that climate, which is really fun as a chef, because it just provides you ideas to cook, which is exciting. I do have a question actually, and I haven't written this one down, but it's definitely just for me. But no-till farming, I've been really interested in that with growing food. And I probably don't quite understand it. When I think of no-till, it's not disturbing the soil. But then when you're planting, I guess you have to build a garden bed. Is no-till, does that just apply to large-scale agriculture, or does it apply to the home gardener or small-scale farming?
Yeah, so tillage is ploughing essentially. So you're ploughing the soil. So no tilling it means to not plough, because soil, all those living things, they've got a home, they've got a system, they've got structure. They actually glue the living things in soil actually glue the soil, the rock particles together in ways that have little holes for air and holes that water can penetrate and all that sort of stuff. And when you till soil, when you plough it, you dig it, you destroy that structure. So in a home garden, it's the exact same as on a big wheat farm. If you can not turn your soil, it's a brilliant thing. So I grew up, hearing, you got to dig in your compost, you got to turn your soil to aerate it. If you actually do that, when you dig soil, yes, it looks fluffier, but it's lost its structure. So by the time it's settled down, it's actually it's more compacted after you've dug it than before. So it might be worth, when you first establish a garden bed to put some organic matter in and dig it in, but then never dig it again if you can help it. Now, these are all. Now that's an idea that you really want to aspire to, but you have to put little holes in to put your crops in. You grow parsnips. You tell me how you can get a parsnip out without digging, or potatoes. So the idea is that, but can you actually do it? In reality, it's a bit trickier. But yeah, the idea is to not destroy the soil structure, and so there's lots of really that's. The majority of your grains now in Australia would probably be grown by not digging. So they direct drill. So they essentially put little holes in the ground and drop the seeds in. But they use big tractors to do that. And you can do that in your home garden. When you think of soil, the best soil in Australia is probably in some rainforest, probably near me in southern Tasmania, really deep topsoil. It's really fertile, and I have never in those ancient forests with the deep topsoil seen an old codger like me digging in the compost. Soil has a system for taking nutrients from the top, so things that mulch, leaf litter that falls on the top, and drawing them down. So in your home garden, mulch the top, maybe apply your compost to the top, and soil has a system for drawing that down into itself, because there are all those living things that do that for us.
If you're with my book Sustain, it's about kind of reconnecting with the food system. Not necessarily if you're growing food, so using farmers markets. And do you think with being a chef or within the industry that there's an opportunity to reconnect with the food system if you're not growing food? Or how do you see restaurants doing it now?
Yeah, definitely. Look, and I think in Australia, what's interesting. The restaurants are. They have a different role than they have in some countries. So, when I travel to China or I travel to Italy or Spain or France, whatever, they have these peasant cultures, and then the restaurants are sort of going, oh, well, I'm going to take the cassoulet or the beggar's chicken, and I'm going to turn it into a fancy dish in the restaurant, and I'm going to raise the stakes. I'm going to make it a more beautiful and elegant thing. And but they're born out of this sort of peasant culture. Here, a lot of people look to restaurants, and that's where they learn about harissa, and it's where they learn about free range chickens, and they discover stuff in restaurants rather than from their grandma around in the kitchen. And I'm not sure why that is, but it just seems to be the nature of our our food culture. And so the responsibility of chefs for me is, they really need to know where the stuff's coming from. It appalls me that most Australians don't want to use cage eggs, from chickens locked in cages. And so virtually no one buys them at the supermarket. But we still sell way more cage eggs than we do free range or your barn laid eggs. And the reason is because we use them in food service. We use them in hotels and clubs and restaurants and cafes and sushi bars or whatever. And so, the chefs have such a responsibility. We deal with such large quantities of food. We influence so many people, even, unknowingly, because they come to our places and they go, oh, look at that. Raspberries are on something. I might go and buy some raspberries. They must be in season, not realizing that the chefs had them, brought 3,000 kilometers away, and they're not really in season where you live. And so that responsibility, I'd love to see chefs getting involved in that food system. But we can all be involved, as a person going to a market, as a shopper in a supermarket, as a home cook, as an eater, a cook, a farmer, a gardener, a chef. We all can play our part in this.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's funny because I do have moments. I guess why I was so excited to speak with you because, I followed that transition that you did from critiquing and chefing to the farm in Tassie. And after Oak Ridge Winery, where I was working with Matt, and then we went to Future Food System, I had this moment of like, what am I doing as a chef? You know, this is a wild thing to be a part of that's potentially damaging our planet. And then I saw what you were doing, and it's given me a lot of hope that, you know, I love cooking. I love being a chef and having a restaurant, but I don't want to do harm. And, you know, it's an interesting balancing act between trying to make a business viable and then trying to do the right thing. And I know a lot of, you know, my peers reach out and kind of say, oh, you know, it's good to be, you know, do things with sustainable practices, but can you get it to work as a business? And I think you can. I think it's about cooking seasonally and composting and reducing chemical use and connecting with your local community. And I think for home cooks, it's about seasonal cooking, like you said, and connecting with your food system if it's just growing something small, or, I don't know, making different choices with your food on your table. And I know you've written a lot of books, and I feel like I'm running out of time to cover everything, but you've spoken a lot about, I guess, choosing a carnivore diet or a plant-based diet. And I think for a long time I thought, you know, a plant-based diet was better for the planet. You know, do you think plant-based diets are more beneficial for the climate, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, look, it's a really nuanced thing. Look, I wrote a book called On Eating Meat, which is about the ethics of eating meat. And I got invited onto panels, and they'd always have me because I eat meat and I've chosen to eat meat, but I used to be vegetarian, and then they'd have like a vegan or a vegetarian, and it was supposed to be this sort of, I was supposed to represent the meat eaters. And the whole point of my book was to say, I really don't care if you eat meat or not, but don't take your information from the internet. Don't just base it on some false assumptions, because a lot of false assumptions in that. I was reading a very well-respected vegan writer who was saying, you know, eating a steak is like flying from New York to London, you know, the carbon emissions, and it simply isn't. So you can't equate the methane that a cow burps out with fossil fuel emissions. They are not. They're false equivalents. So animals can be really damaging for the planet, like really bad, but they can also be really good. The vast majority, not the only, but the vast majority of regenerative farms that are truly drawing down carbon and truly building diverse ecosystems have animals in the system. And because soil needs animals, soil's evolved around animals. So you take animals out of the system, soil really struggles. And so those animals can be wild. You know, you can somehow use wild animals and birds that fly in, hard to manage, or you can use domesticated animals and to restore ecosystems, draw carbon into soil, and you can use them in the system. So for me personally, you know, you're all grown-ups, make your own decision about eating meat or not. A lot of people are making decisions based on false information. Most people who are advocating a vegan diet they farm with their pens, right? They don't farm with their hands and their backs, and they don't necessarily understand ecosystems on the ground. And so we've chosen to eat meat. When I go away, I become a lot more vegetarian when I travel because, because I want to be sure about the welfare of the animals I eat. So I get the vegan vegetarian standpoint in that sense. From an ecological perspective, farming without animals just means relying on chemicals, which is not good for soil, which is not good for the future of the planet. So I think we need animals in the system. How many, who eats them, how that's done. It's everyone's decision about, for themselves what they want to eat. But it'll be pretty hard to run a farming system without animals and actually do it for 10,000 years into the future to look after soil health.
Mm. You have some super interesting panels coming up. One in particular in Byron Bay with Yost and Zach Bush, which I wish I could be there for. I feel like lots of minds are coming together, and there's a lot of topics being spoken about. And I guess to wrap up, do you see a positive future for our food system and farming?
Yeah, I do. I'm lucky enough to get to visit other farms. I'm sitting on one in Western Australia as we speak, where they're doing pasture raised chickens, and they've got all their preserves from their orchard, and they're storing carbon in soil, and you've got tree plantings around the dams, and it's a beautiful place. Like, it's just utterly striking, and you go, this is how farming should be. It's a nice place to be. It's a functioning ecosystem. It's doing services for society in terms of filtering water and cleaning the air and all that kind of stuff. And it's producing nutrient-dense food. And so I have a great hope in the food system. I have a great faith that the people very responsible for growing our food can repair some of the damage we've done, and even make some of the places even better than they were before.
Yeah, so do I. We have some amazing growers down here on the Surf Coast, like Kinsfolk Farm, who grow amazing produce. It's delicious, and then they're getting it out to the public, and it's really exciting. I think there's big movements in different regions that are happening like that.
Yeah, look, you think of how many market gardens are around now, and I'm not sure how long you've been sort of in that system, but 20 years ago, you didn't find many farmers markets, and there were fewer market gardens, and that means market gardens are great because they're local, they're close, they're small scale, so they have to sell it quickly. They can focus really on soil health. They're the worst paid. If you look at, unfortunately, the noble profession of market garden is the lowest paid profession, followed by farmers, followed by hospitality workers. So the things that matter in life don't seem to be rewarded financially, but it's a beautiful lifestyle. There's some amazing people in the space, especially young farmers, because most farmers are older, but young farmers, a lot of women farmers in that space, female farmers, it's just doing unbelievably good stuff, and I tip my hat to all of them.
Yeah. Oh, thanks so much, Matthew, for taking the time to chat with me. I was really excited and nervous, and I think you're amazing, and what you've done is incredible, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm really stoked to talk to you. I want to go to your restaurant.
Yeah, anytime.
I was reading about it. I was going, I want to be there. Yeah, no worries. So hopefully we'll catch up in person soon.
Thank you, Matthew, for taking the time to have a chat with me today. I really appreciate it. I feel like I've learnt a lot. I don't know, Dani, if you have anything you'd like to say?
Well, I would just love to say that I'm so excited to have you both on Dirty Linen. Jo, this has just been such a satisfying week to hand the podcast over to you. I just have really enjoyed the way that you've stepped through these conversations. So much food for thought. And Matthew, I always love listening to you speak, the way that you answer questions, but also pose so many more, and put the responsibility on us as eaters to, we decide if we eat meat, we decide where we want to shop, but to know that there is an impact that comes from that. So yeah, thanks to you both. Really, it's really a thrill for me to hand it over to you. And you just, I just love the way you think, Jo, and great to see you express that in a podcast as well as all the other things you do.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It's been fun.
Bit of a love fest. I was so excited to be invited on.
That's all.
Yeah, virtual.
So my question is, because you both come from the critiquing background, and then I guess, Dani, you've really stepped into the social welfare and that area of hospitality, and Matthew, I guess you're planet warrior. Do you think that restaurants are going to make a positive change for the planet, or worse? Do you think you can be a chef in an ethical way?
Oh, such a big question. I think that it's definitely possible to be a chef in a positive way. And I mean, you're asking the question, but you're also doing it. I think, cooking so thoughtfully. I think there are so many examples of people who are working in that way. But, I also think food is obviously a mass, it's a mass enterprise, and at the mass level, there are really good things going on. I think some of the biggest food manufacturers also have the potential to invest in doing better, but there is, I don't know, the one that I always think of is bubble tea, and I think of the incredible amount of plastic, all the ingredients, and who knows where they come from, and then they're sealed in plastic. I feel like and they're in shopping centres that are insulated from the real world. I mean, imagine thinking about soil while you're standing in, a major Westfield shopping centre buying a bubble tea. I feel like there is still a lot of disconnect, but there is a lot of hope. What do you reckon, Matthew?
Yeah, Dani, you nailed it. 'Cause I think bubble tea is I think it has no upside, in terms of the environment, in terms of farming. It is kind of like the anti-hero. But so I'm a bit like you. I have this great faith. There's people like Jo, and there's amazing young chefs and people doing incredible stuff on the ground. And I see that all the time. And then I'll be in one of our bigger cities, and I'll see that there are how much consumption and thoughtless consumption. And I think that the only way that the planet is, it can be salvaged from its, perhaps inevitable doom, is if we have systems change in a big way. So okay, if they're going to have bubble tea, that has to be in something that's, can be composted, and there are so many things that we as small producers, as people running small venues or individuals going to a shop or a market, can't do. And so some of the big things have to be legislated for, or community standards have to be imposed on other things. You shouldn't be able to sell takeaway in stuff that's not compostable or whatever that thing is. And then they'll do it. Make a rule and everybody will do it, so it. And
yeah, we've seen that again and again. So it's possible, but it takes guts from legislators, and and that's also, I guess, we're all implicated in that, in how we vote. So yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, so time for a bubble tea.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, and thanks again to you, Jo. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtyLinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This